Okay, grounded theory. What's it all about? Basically, rather than starting with a theory and then trying to make sense of your data using that theory, grounded theory switches things around. You start with the data and then you build your theory from that. It's kind of like trying to do a jigsaw puzzle without the picture on the box. You gather the individual puzzle pieces first, and then the picture becomes clearer from there. So instead of approaching your research based on other people's ideas or existing theories, that's deductive. Grounded theory starts with the nitty-gritty details and works up to the big ideas. That's inductive. There are three main varieties of grounded theory, which are associated with the scholars that develop them. Firstly, Glaser and Strauss's classical grounded theory. Secondly, Strauss's interpretivist grounded theory. And thirdly, Sharma's constructivist grounded theory. In this video, we're looking at the first one, classical grounded theory. This is an introductory video that aims to give you a general basic idea of what grounded theory is all about. In the process of simplifying some of the material to help beginners, I've probably lost some of the nuances. And I offer zero apology for that because we've got to start somewhere, okay? But if you want to chuck your 2 cents in and help people understand those nuances, that's awesome. That's what the comments are for, so get in there with any helpful pointers. If we've not met before, hi, I'm Dr. Elizabeth Yardley, and I've got 2 decades worth of experience in supporting social science students through their graduate dissertations. Qualitative approaches are most definitely my jam because of how flexible and adaptable they are. You can really make them your own, and that is great. But because of that flexibility, because you've got quite a lot of room for manoeuvre and adaptation in the qualitative world, that can throw up quite a lot of confusion and uncertainty. And on this channel, I'm trying to keep things simple and help you make progress. I'm going to stop jabbering now. Let's dive in. So classical grounded theory, what is it? Classical grounded theory, pioneered by Glaser and Strauss, is like the OG of grounded theory. It's all about stripping away preconceived notions and ideas that you might have about something, and instead diving deep into the data and looking at the data to find patterns and relationships. Grounded theory draws on ideas from symbolic interactionism, which basically believes that reality isn't this cold, hard, objective, fixed thing. Rather, reality is something that we create through our interactions with each other. In grounded theory, we focus on how we make sense of the world through interacting with others in society. We use symbols and signs and language to make sense of our experiences. We're always thinking about how others see us and how we fit into society through norms. Norms are things that are normal, things that are expected of us in given situations. This approach to research looks at life as it's happening. It looks at what's going on in the world around us right now and builds theory from that. Grounded theory is similar to ethnography in that it starts with observations to try and understand how things work. And it's always really interesting to look at the context in which approaches develop. Now, Glaser and Strauss developed grounded theory in the 1960s because they wanted to move away from using existing theories to make sense of what was going on in the world to actually using what was going on in the world, if that makes any sense. They wanted to ground theory in what was going on at the time. And it's not surprising because this was the 1960s. It was the years following the Second World War. Quite a lot of change had happened in society. Quite a lot of change had happened in the way that people looked at things, the way that people made sense of things. So it's no wonder that social science wanted to basically move with the times and develop some new approaches to make sense of society, make sense of the world, a very different world from the world that had been there 10, 20, 30 years before. So the main goal of grounded theory is to make sense of what's happening in a specific context. It's particularly useful for studying small-scale environments where there hasn't been much research before. So what are some of its key elements? One key aspect of classical grounded theory is its focus on constant comparison. This involves comparing data points to each other in order to identify similarities and differences. This allows researchers to identify categories and concepts from the data itself. Now, what does that even mean? It's time for an example. Let's say a researcher is conducting a study that looks at how people cope with stress at work. Through interviews with employees, they gather a wealth of data about different strategies and behaviours. In the constant comparison process, the interviewer might analyse one interview transcript and identify themes or patterns related to coping mechanisms, such as seeking social support from others or engaging in relaxation techniques. As they move on to the next interview, they continuously compare the themes that they're identifying in the new data with the themes that they identified in the previous interviews. They constantly compare, constant comparison. They might notice similarities such as multiple participants noting how important it is to take breaks. Or differences, for example, people having differing views on how helpful meditation is as a coping strategy. So by systematically comparing and contrasting these different data points from the different interviews, the researcher begins to refine and develop categories and concepts that capture a range of experiences. This iterative process allows for new insights and new theories that are grounded in the experiences of the participants, as opposed to being imposed by external theories, existing theories, external frameworks. Theoretical sampling. This is another hallmark of classical grounded theory. This means that researchers select new participants or new sources of data based on emerging theories or concepts. This is another iterative process which helps refine and validate the developing theory. For example, let's say a researcher is conducting a study on how students adapted to online learning during the COVID-19 pandemic. Initially, they might interview a diverse group of students to get a range of perspectives and a range of ideas on the different challenges and the opportunities of remote education. As the researcher begins to analyse the data, certain themes and patterns start to emerge. They notice that students who had a stable internet connection and had somewhere quiet to study, they adapted to online learning much more quickly than students who didn't have a stable connection or didn't have any Wi-Fi at all and were faced with a myriad of distractions at home. Based on this initial analysis, the researcher might develop a preliminary theory, suggesting that access to resources plays a crucial role in students' adaptation to online learning. To further explore and validate this theory, they select new participants based on their access to resources. For instance, they might purposefully seek out students from low-income backgrounds, or students from rural areas where internet access is more limited. By intentionally selecting participants who represent different dimensions of this emerging theory, the researcher can gather more nuanced data to refine and validate their hypothesis. Through this iterative process of theoretical sampling, the researcher continues to develop and refine their theory, ensuring that it accurately reflects the complexities of students' experiences with online learning. By selecting participants based on emerging theories and emerging concepts, theoretical sampling enhances the depth and the validity of grounded theory research. Now, if you're enjoying this video and you're curious about those other types of grounded theory that I mentioned at the start, so Strauss's interpretivist grounded theory and Sharma's constructivist grounded theory, and you want me to make more videos about those specifically, comment more below and I will make them. Next up, open coding. Open coding is another fundamental technique of classical grounded theory. It involves systematically analysing data to identify and to categorise emerging concepts and themes. Unlike more structured coding methods, it allows for flexibility and creativity. And this is really helpful for researchers because it enables them to capture the richness and the complexity of their data. For example, let's consider a research project capturing the experiences of people who are living with chronic illness. During the open coding process, the researcher begins by thoroughly exploring the data. This could include interview transcripts, field notes, and diary extracts from participants. As they delve into the data, the researcher identifies various concepts, experiences, and themes. These could range from physical symptoms and treatment regimes to emotional struggles and social support networks. Unlike more structured coding methods, open coding allows the researcher to approach this data with a much more flexible and creative mindset. For example, they might encounter a passage in the data where a participant is talking about the challenges and the issues of managing multiple medications and multiple appointments. This could lead to the creation of a code or a category called treatment burden or medical logistics. Similarly, they might come across narratives about the importance of supportive friends or family members, prompting the creation of codes like social support or emotional well-being. Through open coding, the researcher can capture the richness and the complexity of the participants' experiences, and they can do so without imposing preconceived categories or assumptions. This approach, according to classical grounded theorists, fosters a really deep understanding, and it allows for new insights and new connections within the data. Okay, so to finish up, the role of the researcher. This is one area where classical grounded theory differs quite significantly from the interpretivist or the constructivist approaches. In classical grounded theory, the researcher is viewed as relatively neutral. They take a more passive role in receiving and processing data without inserting their own biases or preconceived ideas. They maintain a distance from the data, that arguably allows them to observe clear patterns in the data. Instead of focusing on their own perspective at all, they focus solely on the diverse viewpoints that are being shared by the participants. In contrast, the interpretivist and constructivist approaches to grounded theory often acknowledge the researcher's subjectivity. They actively engage with their role in shaping the research process and interpreting the data. If you're into all things qualitative, there's a video popping up on the screen right now that I think you might find quite interesting. So go and check it out. I'll see you in there.